the minutes that have been played by some of the guys that weren't in the rotation, some of the youngins, you could just see that it's time well spent. They're coming up with some big-time plays for us. Those guys, and all of us really just starting to really know how to play with one another, how we want to play, what we're trying to do. Less mistakes are being made. And I just thought we came out and we played this team really well, man, for the second time. And no matter who plays, we play the right way. We're just going to play right, and that's what I want to happen. Just play right, play together. And we just rely on each other the whole time. But I'm very happy with where we are and the progress that we've made.
Hey Rip City, this is Matisse Thybul, and it's time to open the briefcase with Casey Holdahl.
Greetings, Blizzard fans, and welcome to The Briefcase, episode 83 of The Briefcase. I'm your host, Casey Holdahl, and that was Chauncey Billups discussing the Trailblazers having close losses in their two most recent games, one in Minneapolis versus the Timberwolves, the other Wednesday night versus the Thunder at Moda Center. While the Blazers obviously weren't able to secure either one of those wins, the team has been playing better since getting a couple victories in Memphis versus the Grizzlies, and even shorthanded, they're giving two teams, in this case the two teams at the top of the Western Conference standings, a run for their money. We'll quickly recap the games versus the Timberwolves and the Thunder, check out Portland's improvements in offensive rating, defensive rating, and net rating as of late, look at the Blazers once again bouncing back versus the spread, and hear the second part of my interview with comedian, writer, podcaster, Trailblazer fan, and all-around good guy Ian Karmel on this edition of The Briefcase. Well, after getting back-to-back wins versus the Grizzlies in Memphis, one by 30 points and the other in overtime, the Trailblazers finished off a three-game road trip with a 119-114 loss to the Minnesota Timberwolves Monday night in Minneapolis. Portland trailed by as many as 15 points in that game, but cut the lead down to two possessions with 30 seconds to play. Blazers not able to get over the top in that one, but still able to rally back and give a very good Timberwolves team a very real test. And granted, part of that is just the nature of the NBA. Teams generally at the top of the standings maybe don't play as hard versus teams at the bottom of the standings until they feel like they absolutely have to, so there's probably a little bit of that going on as well, but you cannot discount the improved play by the Trailblazers in that game versus the Timberwolves, a very reasonable chance to get that victory even if they weren't able to ultimately do it. In that game, Anthony Simons had 34 points on 13 of 26 shooting from the field to go with 14 assists, a career-high 14 assists, and 5 rebounds in 43 minutes. Duop breathed another strong performance, 26 points on 10 of 14 shooting from the field. That's a career high for Duop, by the way, and 5 of 6 shooting from 3. I think Duop was in a little bit of a three-point shooting slump there for a couple weeks. Seems like he's broken out of it since then. Also 3 rebounds, an assist, a steal, and a block in just under 39 minutes for Wop in that game. Delano Banton, continuing his strong play since joining the Trailblazers, started the game versus the Timberwolves, finished with 18 points on 7 of 20 shooting from the field, 7 rebounds, and 4 assists in 33 minutes. And then you had Real Rupert, who played 23 minutes in the game versus the Timberwolves, 13 points, career-high 13 points, 6 rebounds for Real in that game. After returning from Minneapolis, Trailblazers had Tuesday off before hosting the Thunder on Wednesday at Moda Center. Portland trailed by as many as 16 points in that game, but once again, as they did a few nights before in Minneapolis, the Trailblazers able to cut into that lead throughout the game, end up forcing the Thunder to play it straight through the entire fourth quarter, Portland getting the lead down to just 2 points with just over 4 minutes to play. Despite being a young team, a very talented team, able to do the things they need to do to ride that game out, but still a very nice opportunity for the Trailblazers to get some reps, get some minutes versus a very good team, and show what they're able to do and hold their own versus teams like that. Some of the stats from Wednesday night's loss to the Thunder: Anthony Simons, 29 points on 10 of 19 shooting from the field and 5 of 10 shooting from 3. 20 points, 4 assists, 2 rebounds in 40 minutes for Jeremy Grant. 13 points, 5 assists, 5 rebounds from Delano Banton. 12 points, 6 rebounds, 1 assist, 1 steal before fouling out in 23 minutes for Chris Murray. And Matisse Thybul, 5 of 6 from the field, 3 of 4 from 3, 3 of 3 from the line for 16 points to go with 6 rebounds, 3 assists, and 3 steals. Matisse passing 500 steals for his career in that game versus the Thunder. Congratulations, Matisse. Feels like he stepped up his game here recently, particularly on the offensive end as of late. Curious to see if he's going to continue to do that, but a couple double-digit scoring nights for Matisse, something we're not necessarily accustomed to seeing out of him, or at least not recently. Obviously a guy who was an elite defender, but shown a little more on the offensive end as well. Kind of the big thing for me that came out of that road trip, getting those 2 wins in Memphis after losing 9 straight and not winning any games in February, I think put the Blazers on a path to play some better basketball in games versus better teams, which they're going to be seeing a lot of here in the last 5 weeks of the NBA season. And what I mean by that is a couple things. One, it's just much easier to teach a team after a victory, so having 2 games that they won that they could teach from as opposed to the 9 previous games that they all lost, I think that focuses a team in a little bit. I think it gives them a reason to feel good about themselves. I don't think they were necessarily hanging their heads when they lost all those games in February, but at a certain point it does start to weigh on you a little bit. And so just getting a few wins, getting some tape that shows you doing good things that you've been working on gives you something to feel positive about. And every now and then, throughout the course of a long NBA season, particularly when you've lost a lot of games in a row, you need something to feel good about every now and then. The Blazers got that in Memphis and were then able to go to Minneapolis and then host the Thunder a few days later in Portland. And I think just having something that they felt good about allowed them to go into those games feeling like they could give those teams a run for their money, and they absolutely did. And as I've talked about all season long, the other part of that too is when you're losing consistently, it's just hard to keep telling yourself that you can win games going into those games. So getting a couple wins versus the Grizzlies, even if they're not the same level of teams like the Thunder and the Timberwolves, gives players a confidence going into those next games that like, hey, we can get these games. We're not a team that's going to lose every single game from here on out. So I think getting those wins in Memphis kind of reset the deck for this team a little bit going into a very game-heavy month of March. And I think if you're a Blazer fan, particularly this season, you know what it is. You just want to see the team go out and play well. And I believe you saw that in games versus the Timberwolves and the Thunder, not to mention the 2 games versus the Grizzlies. Would you like to see those decent performances turned into wins? Some of you probably would, though some of you probably don't. But you have to walk before you can run, and this team, while taking quicker steps, is still learning. And next up for the Trailblazers, after starting a homestand with the loss to Oklahoma City, they'll host the Rockets on Friday and the Toronto Raptors on Saturday. They'll have a day off before hosting the Boston Celtics on Monday, and then the Atlanta Hawks on Wednesday, and then finishing up the homestand by hosting the New York Knicks on the 16th before heading out for a 2-game road trip, weird old road trip, New Orleans at Chicago. So a really heavy week of games for the Trailblazers, 5 games over the next week, 2 of those being back-to-backs. All right, moving on, with roughly 5 weeks left in the 2023-24 season, the Blazers have jumped to 28th in offensive rating at 108.6 points scored per 100 possessions, which is slightly better than last week, and they're now above both the Hornets and the Grizzlies. Almost the entire season, the Blazers have been either 30th or 29th, so getting up into 28th, I don't know if I'd say it's cause for celebration, but it is a good thing. And on the other side of the ball, the Blazers also moved up 1 spot from 22nd to 21st in defensive rating at 116.6 points allowed per 100 possessions, which is a slight improvement from last week as well. The Blazers are behind the Kings in 20th, and just barely, and ahead of the Spurs in 22nd in terms of their defensive rating. And finally, the difference in Portland's offensive rating and defensive rating is their net rating, which dropped a point last week from -9 to -8, which is good for 27th in the NBA. Moving on to a different brand of stats, after dropping 7 straight versus the spread, the Trailblazers have now covered in their last 4 games. They were 1-point underdogs to the Grizzlies and won the first game by 30, and then 2-point underdogs to the Grizzlies in the next game and won by 7 in overtime. They were 15-point underdogs to the Timberwolves in Minneapolis and only lost that game by 5, and they were 13.5-point underdogs to the Thunder and only lost that game by 8. So the Blazers, after failing to cover in 7 straight, have now covered in 4 straight games. And as for their season win projection, with 17 victories this year, the Blazers need additional 12 wins in their final 21 games to hit the over on the 28.5 win projection that Vegas set prior to the start of the season. Alright, and to wrap up, we are going to play the second part of my interview with Ian Karmel. The first part of the interview was in the last edition. I highly suggest you go check it out. In this edition, we talk about Ian's new book, T-Shirt Swim Club, being a quote-unquote fat person, which is the parlance that Ian prefers to use, by the way, so don't come at your boy about that. When he decided to make some changes in his life, when your work plays even a small role in helping somebody else, celebrating nice things, All Fantasy Everything, Ian's great podcast in which they draft the beach, which we discussed a little bit, and Ian gives some predictions about the Trailblazers going into next season.
Since we're talking about body issue,
Yes,
so your book that's coming out soon, I believe T-Shirt Swim Club?
T-Shirt Swim Club, available from Penguin Random House, June 11th. Yeah.
Penguin Random House.
Penguin Random.
Jeez.
Every media company is combining where if I write a second book, it's going to come out from like Penguin Random House, Costco,
Well, if you had said
NBC
Simon
Universal.
Schuster, I'd be like, Okay.
No.
Penguin Random House.
Simon's a nice guy, but Schuster, frankly,
Yeah, no,
I refuse to do
no
business
chance.
with.
Yeah.
It's a book I wrote with my little sister. I'm still a fat person now. I used to weigh around 420 pounds. Fans of the Blazers or people who know me will know that. I've been fat my entire life. I say the word fat because I don't think fat is a bad word.
Absolutely.
I think it's not fat people's fault that people use it to, like, every time we pick a new word, people just use that, and then obese became the word that people used to make fun of us.
Sounds worse.
It's a beautiful word in a way, but but it's because it was like meant to be the word that saved us from bullies, and then it got loaded, in my opinion, and then got loaded up with all this trauma. You know what I mean, for lack of a better word.
Well, it's so geometric.
Overweight, the same thing happened too. Like it's not the word's fault that people beat us over the head with it. So I'm like, you know what? I prefer fat. I'm going to say fat. I became a stand-up comedian. And I think a large part of that was being a fat kid and wanting to like beat people to the joke they were making anyway, wanting to have some ownership over it, wanting to get affirmation and acceptance however I could. And for me, that was like making people laugh. My little sister is, a fat person and was also a fat kid. We both lost weight around the same time. I think we both consider ourselves fat to whatever that means. Everyone is on, I guess it's like a scale like everything else right now. But she became a clinical psychologist. So she's got 2 master's degrees and a doctorate, and she works with fat kids. That's like a huge part of what her business is. She works with people who are considering bariatric surgery, like the lap band thing, to talk to them. They have that, which I think is really good, to make sure people don't just like get it like, oh, I feel chubby, I want to fit into this dress at a wedding 3 weeks from now, so I'm going to get the surgery or whatever. It's like, no,
I
you have
actually
to go
went
through
through one of those with a family member, and it's like I have mixed feelings about it. Yeah.
You know what? I feel the same way. I'm never going to tell. It's your body, and you're going to make the choice. And I would never tell anyone what to do. But I am glad that people are encouraged to speak to, a clinical psychologist beforehand. Because also, if you do it, you want to make sure that you're doing the lifestyle changes that will maintain.
Because if not, then you're going to get yourself a
get the
situation where
surgery
you're back to
for
where you are. Then
nothing.
you're going to feel even worse about yourself because
Exactly,
you feel like,
right.
can't I do it? Yeah,
So we were talking one day about just the idea of like a fat doctor. How wonderful it would have been if we had like a fat doctor when we were like fat kids or fat adults. I didn't go to the doctor for like 10, 15 years. It was like if something was wrong with me, I'd go to urgent care.
Yeah.
I would get whatever that one thing dealt with, and then I would leave as fast as I could. And then that urgent care guy would have like 16 patients in the waiting room. So it's like he didn't stop to think about me again for a second. And like going to the doctor when you're a fat person is awful for the most part. There's some good ones, but it's awful because you go, no matter what's wrong, you could walk in, with like a samurai sword sticking out of your torso, and he's going to be like, you got to lose some weight. I'm like, great, but what about this sword?
What about the sword?
Let's address the fat first, and then we'll get to the sword. They make you, like, they shame you.
Yeah.
And they're right.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, in a way, they're right about the base issue, even if they're, couldn't be delivering that message in a worse way. And, it's usually like a person who's never really dealt with being fat for the most part, with the reality of that. And it's usually some person who just got off a rowing machine and has had a 6-pack since they were on crew at Yale. Like that's who you're dealing with. So we were talking, it was like, it would be great to like write a book about our experiences. Like you're a doctor, I'm a comedian, we can come at it from these 2 different angles. So what we ended up writing is this like it's a memoir about being fat in 13 essays where I write about my experiences like a fat kid, middle schooler, high schooler, like I write about like buying clothes when you're fat and seeing like growing up in the era of like Fat Bastard and Eric Cartman being like these like huge punchlines on television and like thinking how funny those were, but also like every time someone, people quoted those things back to me like all the time. Yeah. Even you're like on the football field, everyone's like yelling, "Get in my belly" at you, like it's traumatic. So I wrote about all those things. I wrote about going to the doctor when you're fat, like the thing that finally made me take it seriously, which was like, I was up here in Portland. I'd already started trying to lose weight in like very serious way and get to like a healthier place. And, I woke up at like 4 a.m. I thought I was having a heart attack because my heart was like pounding out of my chest. And, I went down to the sidewalk. I was staying at a friend's condo and typed 911 into my phone. And I was standing there waiting to hit send. I'm like, if my heart doesn't calm down, I'm going to hit it because I think I'm having, which is the worst thing to do, by the way. If you think you're having a heart attack, call an ambulance.
Yeah, they just want you to, don't chance it. Yeah.
But I was so ashamed. I'm like, oh no, because if I do, that means I have a problem, right? Like it was this weird thing where I'm like, if I acknowledge that I'm having a heart attack, that means I have something I need to fix, which is such a twisted way of thinking, but it's this sticking your head in the sand kind of thing, right?
How your brain, yeah.
So it turns out I didn't call an ambulance. It turned out I was having a panic attack, but I went to the doctor anyway later that night. I actually went to urgent care again. I went to like a Zoom care urgent care here in Portland, and they told me my blood pressure was 200 and something over something. And a normal healthy range is like between 100 and 130 over 60 to 85 or 90. So I'm not a doctor, so don't listen to me, but it's in somewhere in there.
It was too high.
Which is to just say mine was extremely too high, medically dangerously high. And, it was terrifying and awful and isolating and so scary. But I decided in that moment it was less scary than not knowing because I was having that blood pressure anyway. It wasn't the machine that made me have it, right? It was me and my behavior at the time and like everything I was doing. And I was like drinking all the time. Not at this point, but I drank the night before because I'd been healthy for like 3 months and I was like, I'm going to like blow off some steam. You know, in 2019, 2018, like leading up to it, I was like definitely drinking too much and like eating like very unhealthy foods all the time. I was like doing drugs, like stuff, party drugs and stuff like that. All the stuff that was bad for me because I was in a very fatalistic state of mind, just in general. Cause I'm like, there aren't a lot of people who look like me who are 50.
Yeah.
Not really all that many who are 45 who look like me either. You're watching like all your idols, Chris Farley, 27 and like John Candy died at a young age, like I think Ralphie May had died like around this time too, like John Panette, all these like heavy stand-up comedians who died like much younger than I think they were certainly ready for. And like there's this like baseline of mortality that runs through your entire system at that time. So confronting it was terrifying, but I was like, you know what? I'm going to continue confronting it. I'm going to go to the doctor and I'm actually going to do something about this. And with that doctor's help, I started like really focusing on getting healthier, losing weight. Yes, that was part of it, but just getting healthier and like because you can be a fat person and be healthy.
Absolutely.
That's something you can also be a lean person and be very unhealthy.
Incredibly unhealthy.
So with a doctor's help, like I know it's expensive and I know it's annoying, but sometimes adult things are expensive and annoying and we can complain about that and justifiably so, but it also doesn't change the reality of us living in the United States where that is.
And it affects you whether or not it's fair or not. Yeah.
Dying is more expensive. I mean, it doesn't cost you anything except the rest of your life, right? So in my opinion, that's more expensive. So I write about that in the book, and by the time we were done, it was like a memoir. It was like our story. It's really funny, if I can say that about like myself. It's really funny. I try to make it as relatable as possible. I wanted people to know that these messages were coming not from someone looking down their nose at you, but also from someone who has been through it and continues to go through it because it's like a lifelong thing. And you're getting empathy and jokes and understanding and honesty from me. And you're getting that same thing from my sister, but also someone who knows what she's talking about, like an actual doctor, someone who knows the science. So each of the essays that I wrote, she responds to as a doctor and as my sister. And yeah, like everyone who's read the book has really loved it and has said it's been like people whose like body image issues range from being like 10 pounds overweight to other people like me who are like very medically unhealthy because of their weight. Have like connected to it, and that's been like this amazing thing. So yeah, I'm just super proud of it. I hope people read it.
You should be, yeah.
I hope people like it. Like, but even if like nobody reads it, like it was just such an amazing thing for me to get to write and to do it with my sister. But I do hope people read it because I think like this is the book that I would have wanted to read when I was like 420 pounds and terrified but not able to acknowledge it. And even like right now I could stand to lose 20 pounds to get back down to a level where I feel at my like kind of healthiest, right? And the idea of losing 20 pounds is like daunting. So the idea of like having to lose 180 pounds like I did was horrifying.
Yeah.
Seems impossible. You're like, oh yeah, I'll lose 180 pounds. You know what I mean? And then I'll go like, and then I'll go like get picked first to the NBA draft, and then like I'll run for the Senator of Wisconsin. Like all these things seem likely feasible to me. But I did it, and I went through with it, and like it actually happened. And this is not a weight loss book by any means. I talk about how I did it, but I also talk about how this is not a prescriptive thing at all. Because I think it is a matter of finding the thing that works for you the best. But I just wanted to talk about how I did it in a way that is like, you can do it, because I know intimately that feeling of desperation and how impossible it is. That level of intimidation that makes you buy $400 juicers because you think that's going to fix it, or sign up for like some powdered food diet, or get a bariatric surgery, and again, or like start taking Ozempic, and any which way you get to the result you want to get, you know what I mean, is like cool with me. But like, I truly don't have any, criticism for any of those people. Like, it's such a personal choice, but like, I did want people to know that it is possible and you can do it. And so that's in the book there too. And then talking about the reality of losing that weight and losing, for me as a stand-up comedian, losing touch with my identity as a comedian.
Sure. Yeah.
Which was crazy because like as a fat guy, I didn't only joke about being a fat guy, but it informed all my comedy.
Yeah.
That's who I was. That was my character on stage. So having to like revamp that as a sort of maintenance phase in and of itself, where I'm like, okay, who am I now to other people? Then you have to go back and revisit who you were when you were heavier, and like, how did that affect your psyche? So hopefully that helps people too if they're in that stage of it. So anyway, you can pre-order it. There's a hard copy. There's an audiobook coming out as well that I'm going to be doing if you're enjoying these dulcet tones.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Casey's doing my sister. No, my little sister's doing my little sister.
I would love to get into voice work, so if she's looking for someone to pitch it.
You've got a fantastic voice.
Yeah, thanks, Ian.
Yeah. And if that sounds at all interesting to you, pre-orders help a whole lot. They help the publisher decide how much money to spend on marketing it. We've already gotten some good reviews, which is awesome. But if you feel like helping out and you plan on getting the book anyway, pre-orders are a big, big help.
I'm going to pre-order after the show.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
So this is me just straight up asking for everyone's money.
And
if they want it.
You should give Ian your money. And I wanted to mention this too because we didn't really talk about it.
Yeah.
So when we got started here, a woman came over and thanked Ian for the work that you do and how it really helped her. And I imagine that this book is going to do a lot of the same things for people, or I hope it would, because I mean, if you're having that kind of success with your comedy, to be open and honest and kind of forthright about your own experience, that it already helps people, again, just through the comedy piece. So like that piece as well, I bet that's something you should feel really good about, Ian.
If it helps, thank you very much, first of all. If it helps at all, if it helps anyone else, and I like, especially because I know how it feels because I've been through it, and like I was, again, like I this is not a thing I am washing the entire fat experience with at all. But I was like in a tailspin of a slow suicide with the way I was not just treating my body, but like with like almost this sense of fate for like how I felt, like this tailspin I was stuck in, and I was like, this is my fate. This is who I am, and this is what like I'm going through, and like you sort of it's very painful, but you sort of in the day to day you sort of acclimate to it, and you like put on a happy face. And I had so many in the lasagna of Ian Karmel, there were all these layers of happy, and like I had wonderful friendships, wonderful relationships with my family, wonderful romantic relationships. My career was going great, but this base layer was this like I'm killing myself, and I'm aware of that. And like, if other people are going through that, and there's any sense of knowing that other people have felt that exact same way, and that like that there are ways out of it, and if anyone gets that from this book, that will be like one of the. I mean, I would consider it the best thing I've done, with my life so far, other than being a member of my family.
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, because for me, like, and I'm just right about the team, but like anytime someone comes up and is like, "Hey, man, I really appreciate what you do," like, I know for me, like that's like that feels better than anything else.
Yeah.
Like, it really does. Like, and I really want to thank people for that, too, because it happens way more often than I think it should, or that I assume it ever would.
No, man, but you're like you distraction, which it feels like such a, just the very essence of the word, like it distracts you from the important things,
Sure,
right? But
yeah.
no, man, that is like what life is all about. Life is heavy, like it can be very heavy. And those things where this podcast, the things you write, when you pop up on TV, those things that help people remember the wonderful things about life, we need that, man.
Yeah,
we
you're
need
right
those
about that,
little
man.
we need those little venting off some steam or just pulling us away, keeping our mind off where reminding us that it isn't all dark and terrible and painful, it reminds you of the reasons there are to live.
Yeah.
Which maybe seems like a silly thing to say about comedy and basketball, but if it weren't for comedy and basketball,
I mean, I don't. Again, sure, they're both our respective industries, but no, that's why they exist.
Yeah, exactly.
If everyday workaday life was great, you would just do that all the time.
Yeah.
So
between those two things and your wine bar with CJ McCollum at the Vineyard, I think
it's really coming together.
I think you're really going to be able to help some people.
I appreciate that. Well, I've already taken too much of your time in, but I did real quick. I wanted to your All Fantasy Everything obviously is incredibly successful.
One of the only podcasts.
Exactly. And I think maybe one of 3 comedy podcasts.
It's one of 3 comedy podcasts total.
So,
and we're trying to get rid of the other 2.
Yeah. Well, and best of luck.
Thank you very much
on that too.
Mark Maron, I'm coming for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's not even a comedy podcast.
Not really. No.
That's a recovery podcast.
Mark, it's a recovery podcast.
Yeah,
it is.
Yeah.
It's so good, though.
Yeah, it's great. No, it's fantastic. It's like writing, too. People are really good at something. You're always like, oh, man, that's so great.
Yeah.
And you're like,
I don't even feel he's so good at that I'm not even jealous. You know what I mean?
That's true. There is that level of where someone's good at something where you feel like you could attain it, and you're like, gosh, dang it. And then there's the other level where you're like, there's no way I could get there. So I'm just going to appreciate it for what it is. Yeah, exactly.
Thank you for your work.
There is a difference there. You're exactly right. So what's going on in the AFE world?
Man, we're chugging along. We just did a February where we had a brand new guest on every episode. We had some super funny comedians. We had Kurt Braunohler, Rosebud Baker, Moshe Kasher, Ryan Sickler. We had a bunch of great comics on. And now March is not a themed month, but we've got a bunch of other amazing guests coming on. We fantasy draft non-sports things. So my favorite part of being in a fantasy league was always drafting.
Sure.
I loved it. And then I was the dude who people hated because 3 weeks into the league,
you're just not
I'd forget to set my lineup.
That's your boy right here.
So all we do is chips. And then we go through 5 rounds, 4 people, drafting chips. It gets heated. It's the stupider the topic, frankly, the more heated it gets, where it's Cheetos go in the first round and somebody can't believe it. It's that kind of thing. So we'll draft
jalapeno Cheetos is one of the best chips out there, right?
You think Cheetos is?
Jalapeno?
Oh,
the jalapeno
the
flavored
crunchy ones?
Oof.
Yeah.
They have those on the plane sometimes for the team.
Dude.
That's a good look.
Although the puffy ones I like because you can put them in your mouth and let them melt.
Oh, dude, that's so much fun. I love all Cheetos, man, which is why I was really – the fact that Scoot did a Cheetos sneaker and no one from Puma or Cheetos reached out to me is something that I'm still having a hard time with.
Well, frankly, that's why they find themselves at third place in the industry right now. Please, Puma, Cheetos, hit me up. And one of the reasons why I haven't got a chance to listen to the most recent episode, I believe it's about your draft Beach, right? Kurt Braunohler was on. We drafting the Beach, which we thought was for the end of February, early March. We're getting close. We're not close yet, but we're getting close to close. Where, soon it's going to be April before we know it. Then all of a sudden you're going to be some nice days. You're thinking about going to whatever your coast is.
Get the chest hair out.
Get that chest hair out. Letting the taco meat sizzle in the sun, dude. Come on.
So you did mention the thing that I wanted to get to was you mentioned wherever your coast is or wherever your beach is. Mm-hmm. So as an Oregonian who lives in Los Angeles, when you're drafting beach, are you in your head? Are you thinking
strictly
tropical
Oregon
LA
coast.
beach, or are you doing Oregon coast? Because as someone who spends a lot of time at the Oregon coast, that's where I first went.
I'm an Oregon coastman. Yeah. That's still my first association. I enjoy an LA beach. How could you not? It's 75 degrees. You're up in Malibu. It's gorgeous. It's a little too easy for me.
Yeah.
Frankly, it's a little too easy. Also, and I say this in the episode, I think the Oregon beach, whether the weather is amazing, you're winning. If the weather's terrible, you're winning. You're in a beach house. You're in
awesome.
Manzanita.
Love it.
You're getting pelted with rain. The storm's rolling in. You're sitting there drinking like a hot toddy, playing Trivial Pursuit or whatever with your family.
And some games, no
your
cause
mom's
to go
over on
out.
the couch doing a crossword puzzle. You know what I mean? It's like,
oh, man.
you can't beat it, man. I love it. Getting a Depot Bay tie-dye sweatshirt for some reason. I love the Oregon coast is my coast. Kurt is from the New Jersey Shore, so that was his coast.
Oh, okay.
And Sean is from Sioux Falls,
He's from
South
Dakota. So,
I'm not really sure
his
what
coast is the shores of some muddy river somewhere.
Yeah, exactly right, yeah. So, yeah, Oregon coast for me. We are I think, like, just outside of Manzanita family, because we would camp every summer. Like, for a week, we would go, like, beach camping. And that was, like, my main beach thing. And now we do a beach house because everyone's a little older. But it's still, like, in that general area. Although, like Cannon Beach, I don't mind going to a little saltwater taffy.
Cannon Beach is great.
Some great bookstores
Pacific City,
there.
They got the houses right on the beach.
Oh, yeah.
And Manzanita is obviously awesome. Tillamook, it's not on the beach necessarily, but you got the cheese.
Close enough.
The knee tarts is right there.
Yeah.
You got some great crab and some
oysters,
great clamming.
some crabs.
Oh, exactly.
Southern
I've never
Oregon
spent any
coast
time in
is great,
Astoria,
too.
though. As an Oregonian, I've never spent any time in Astoria.
You got to go to Astoria.
I feel bad.
It feels wild.
Yeah.
It feels like civilization is
Yeah, it's like you're in the fur trade.
hanging on.
Yeah,
You're in the fur trade.
yeah.
Like, it's beautiful. Some of those old houses are gorgeous, and like you're getting pelted with wind and rain, and like, yeah, it feels. I love Astoria.
It's hard
man.
to explain to people too,
Yeah.
because I remember I was someone who worked for the team. She was asking me about the Oregon coast, and she was like, "Why is it so broad?" And I was like, "Well, what are you talking about?" She's like, "Well, like coast to California, like it's it's like the sand and then the water.
Yeah.
Like you guys have like a lot of space in between." And I was like, well, I mean, I think that's just kind of the geography of the thing. And I was like, and like you're not exactly like using the sand to like lay out a lot to get under the water.
Maybe
No, I do.
Maybe
like
20, 30 days a year.
Yeah. But it was one of those things where it's like, to some people just hate it. But yeah, I feel like if you grow up here, like you have like this love for it that like you can't.
The
even
Pacific
explain
Northwest is the end of the line of American civilization. This is it. Like California just feels so. They're like it's the big city right up to the ocean. You know what I mean?
Like, California is like opportunity and
is.
like the unbridled possibilities.
And up here, it's like, I mean, we had lumber and we had like fishing and all that stuff, but it's like, forgive me for being like overly poetic, but it's almost like this manifest destiny was a wave that like crested across the country. And in certain ways, it does feel like those waters are receding back inland on the Oregon coast.
Yeah.
At certain, you know what I mean? Where you're like, it never quite knocked over. Obviously, the genocide of Native peoples was horrible and remains horrible, but it doesn't feel conquered the way that like the beaches in LA do, or certainly the ones on the East Coast, where you're like, I'm sitting by the beach, but these elk are also here, and like all that, like and right over there, there's no roads, there's no, it's just trees, it's a mountain into the ocean.
And
feels like the end of the line.
The place where I go a lot, there's trailer homes that are like on the beach.
Yeah.
Like, and so it's like, these are just regular folks living here. Like
they have those in Malibu, but they're $2 million.
Yeah, exactly.
And they're like kitschy. You know what I mean? Yeah.
No, this is literally like, we live here. Like,
this is actually as cheap as it gets.
The salt water's a little hard on the aluminum, but we make it work.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah. Oregon coast is different, and for me, preferable.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Me too. Well, so just to wrap it up here, Ian, so Revolution Hall,
March 23rd.
Tickets still available for the second show.
Yes.
T-shirt Swim Club. Pre-order now
Pre-order
from
it.
Penguin and Random.
Penguin Random House. Who are now one publisher. There's a link to that in my bios as well, or you can just Google T-shirt Swim Club. I am not supposed to say where you should pre-order it from.
Okay.
So I will say you can pre-order it from Amazon or Barnes & Noble, or you can go to powells.com, or you can go to bookshop.org, which will let you pre-order it through your local bookstore. The money will go to your local bookstore. Local bookstores are rarely operating at a profit and always hanging on for dear life.
Wait, you mean the publishing industry isn't booming right now?
It actually kind of is,
sure.
But it's like, but the way people buy books has changed so drastically.
Okay. Absolutely.
So if you can order it that way, I think that's wonderful. Or you can go to Barnes & Noble or Amazon. So there's so many different ways you can get it.
And you also want to subscribe to All Fantasy Everything wherever you get your podcasts.
And that one's free. That one doesn't cost you anything but your time, baby.
You get that for free. So before I let you go, though, Ian, I'm going to put you on the spot here one time. I want one Trailblazer prediction for next season. So 2024-25. Trailblazer prediction.
No,
and it can be about anything. It doesn't have to be about record. Okay. It can be about awards. It can you just pick something out.
Okay, I'm going to go in a Russian nesting doll of specificity. I think next season a Portland Trailblazer will make the All-Star game.
Ooh, okay.
And I'm going to get more specific now. Oh, they got rid of it. So now it's just front court and back court. I think it's going to be Jeremy Grant.
Oh.
Or DeAndre Ayton.
Okay.
I think one of those two dudes. I think the team is going to be good enough next season, and I think one of them is going to be so good that they're going to make the All-Star team. Now that I've said it, I kind of feel like that's not going to happen.
Hey, but you got to hang out there, man. So I appreciate that. And I
think Shaedon Sharpe makes a leap next year too.
There you go. That's I'm
over
with you
someone's
on that
head for my style.
It is leap day too, I guess. By the way, too, and though it won't be when I post this. So,
no.
Ian, thank you so much for joining me.
My pleasure.
Fantastic as always. All the best of luck. Buy the book. Go to the shows. Listen to the podcast.
Please.
Subscribe to it. All the success in the world, Ian.
Thank you very much.
Pancakes
Same to you.
for the table, man.
Pancakes for the table. It's a movement.
It's
escaped my hands now. It's out there. It's in the world. It belongs
Absolutely.
to. It belongs
the other thing
to the
I remember
world.
too, that's from years ago. You mentioned one time that you were the person when you go to Red Robin and you're getting the fries. You're
fries
like,
for the
let's do
table.
the fries for the table.
Fries for the table.
That's always stuck with me.
I
Ian.
just got inducted into my first. You have to do that, by the way. They can't say no. I just got inducted into my high school's Hall of Fame last weekend, and they let you put whatever you wanted on the plaque. And now I didn't take it so far because I didn't want to test them. But I got them to put that I was the first person to call Beaverton the Tron.
Oh,
so now that's
wow.
Now that's written.
That's huge. Actually,
now that's committed to plaque.
That's huge. See, so
and
you
I
got
believe
the
it's
Tron,
true.
And I believe Sean Mager calls Tiger the guard. He was the first person that ever said that.
Well, we'll see. Is it on a plaque?
I don't think Sean's had his name retired anywhere at Tiger High School. So
mine is on a plaque.
Yeah,
the Tron.
The Tron.
You don't owe me any money. That's my gift to the city.
I'm not being facetious right now. Like that's pretty legit.
Thank you very much. Shout out to the Tron.
So there you go, Ian Karmel. Check out his show at Revolution Hall on the 23rd. Check out his book, T-Shirt Swim Club. Pre-order wherever you get your book pre-orders. Like and subscribe to All Fantasy Everything. And give the guy a high five if you see him around town. And that's going to do it for this edition of The Briefcase. Thank you so much, as always. New editions next week. A busy weekend of games for the Portland Trailblazers. Seems like some guys are getting healthier. I would imagine that DeAndre Ayton may be going to play in one of these games coming up this weekend. His condition has improved, but he hasn't played since having that hand strain. Sounds like Scoot Henderson is making progress. Hopefully he'll be back in lineup sometime soon as well. No real update on Malcolm Brogdon. Not necessarily expecting one anytime soon. Same thing with Shaedon Sharpe. Still probably a couple weeks at absolute best from returning, if he does in fact return. But those are things we'll catch up on a little later on. I'm Casey Holdahl. You've been listening to The Briefcase. Go Blazers.